Two peasants living in Stapenhill and under the administration of Burton Abbey absconded to the village of Drakelow, then in the ownership of Nigel de Stafford, leadman of Earl Roger the Poitevin. They wished to live under the lordship of de Stafford rather than the abbot. These two men spoke evil words and laid false accusations against the abbot and stirred up the Lord Nigel against him. They also took the crops they had grown from their storage barn to Drakelow. Geoffrey Malaterra, having gone barefoot to pray for guidance at the shrine of Modwenna, ordered that their crops be seized by the monastery. The charges that the men brought against the abbot are not recorded, but they were enough to anger Nigel to the point where he was so incensed that he threatened to kill the abbot. Lord Nigel sent his men, along with the two peasants, to take back the misappropriated crops, along with whatever else was stored in the monks' barns in Stapenhill. The next day, at the third hour, around 9 o'clock in the morning, the two peasants had just sat themselves at the table to eat when they were both struck down dead. They were buried the following day in wooden coffins in Stapenhill churchyard. That same evening, before sunset, the two dead men arrived in Drakelow, carrying their wooden coffins, and spent the evening and night walking the paths and fields of the village, terrifying the inhabitants by banging on the walls of their houses and exhorting them to join them and follow, shouting, "Come with us, move, and follow on." This continued night after night for some time, with the undead vampires shifting between the shapes of men, bears, dogs, and other animals, horrifying and terrifying the villagers and the Lord Nigel and his retainers. Next came something worse. The village of Drakelow was struck by plague, which ravaged the village, killing many of the populace. 3 men survived: Drogo, who was Lord Nigel's reeve, and 2 others. Seeing that one of his villages had been devastated, Nigel went to the abbey, a chastened man, and prayed to the abbot and to Modwenna that they might lift the curse upon Drakelow. He restored the looted grain and more besides. The reeve Drogo was sent to found a new village, which he did, and called it Gresley. The 2 other men were struck with an ailment that left them bedridden. The shape-shifting vampires continued to harass the locals still, and eventually the villagers vowed to confront the problem directly. They went to the graves of the 2 peasants and opened the coffins, to find that the linen covering their faces was soaked in fresh blood. They took out the bodies, hacked off their heads and placed them back in the coffins between their knees. They cut out their fleshy hearts, reburied the bodies and carried the men's hearts back to Drakelow, where at the place called Dodecrosophora, the villagers built an enormous pyre, and casting the hearts into the flames continued to load wood onto the fire all day. Eventually, the heat from the flames grew so hot that a great cracking sound was heard, and the hearts burst asunder. As they did so, an evil spirit in the form of a great crow was seen to rise from the flames and fly away. Seeing the great bird fly off, the 2 sick peasants arose, and gathering their wives, children, and belongings they left Drakelow for Gresley. Drakelow was left waste and empty and was considered cursed for many years, with people giving thanks to Modwenna for saving them. Nigel de Stafford's family adopted the name Gresley instead of Drakelow, despite the family seat remaining at Drakelow for many centuries, along with a later mill and outlying farms. The village of Drakelow itself, considered cursed, was never refounded.